Chapter 510. Even on a joyous day like this, overindulging in liquor isn't wise. We should take a brief rest in the lounge. Though they pretended not to watch, the onlookers pricked up their ears at the booming voice of Duke Paleta. I will be sending Enon and Lusan after you soon. If you want to dance some more, do it there. This is an order. Facing a gaze that seemed teasing yet serious, Yidhir let out a soft sigh. Telling him to dance there likely meant first confirming he was in good health before handling the matters with Keol. It was a typical Kishirla Or method of dealing with issues, not obstructing your goals but expressing concern all the same. Understood. Yidhir obediently nodded and headed towards the exit. As if by coincidence, he stopped to ask Keol, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs. May I ask you something? What? Caught off guard, Keol stumbled back as if he had discovered a bug under his feet. The ornamental sword at his waist clanged against his kneecap. Grimacing in pain, he clenched his teeth but didn't make a sound. Do you know which lounge is currently empty? Keol was standing right in front of the hallway that led to the lounges. Whipping his head in that direction, he seemed to gasp excessively, as if he had just realized that was a signal from Yidhir. To any onlooker, it would have seemed as if Keol was appalled and enraged at being questioned by a commoner. But Yidhir clearly saw the fear in his eyes. He's making a fuss because he doesn't want to look suspicious. It's all empty. His voice cracked as if he was grinding his teeth while speaking. Then any room will do, thank you. Without hesitation, Yidhir headed into the first lounge. He felt two piercing gazes on his back. One was undoubtedly from Keol, and the other was Kashtian Laor. Yidhir sat down on a luxurious sofa in a lounge spacious enough for about 10 people to comfortably rest. The scrutinizing gaze disappeared, but Kashtian's visage, which had been watching him throughout the evening, lingered in his mind. Unusually, Kashtian was quite outspoken at formal events. However, considering today's gathering was for belittling the cavalry along with Duke Diarca, he had been exceptionally quiet. He wasn't engaging in oily banter with the young nobles as he usually did, nor was he busy with anything else. Instead, he sat alone, the young crown prince. Even though the turmoil surrounding Qualishet had unfolded and Baron Dermond had fallen, Kashtian had been overtly observant of Yidhir. That gaze weighed heavily on him. His expression didn't seem filled with the wrath that would come from a grudge dating back to the harvest festival. Could his heightened interest in me be due to my abilities? Frankly, he didn't care what Kashtian thought. However, considering that the star of Nagran and the sage were close to Kashtian, that part unnerved him slightly. Well, I will get to ask Keol about that soon enough. At that moment, someone knocked on the door and entered. It wasn't Keol, but Enon. Where is Priest Lusan? He's in the bathroom. He'll be late. Enon spat out the words curtly and began to roughly untie the tie that wrapped around his neck. With a grim face, he spoke. It seems we can't even have one peaceful day. Just when I thought today might be different, suddenly a solo performance appears. ... What's this about developing a resistance after recovering from monster injuries? I don't recall ever saying that. Yidhir calmly explained once more, hearing Enon say the same thing that Kishir had. Half of it was a lie. It's better to say that than to admit I'm unaffected by poisons and drugs other than those from monsters. ... However, there was some byproduct from a monster in that drink, so I do feel a little drunk. The commander said my body temperature has risen. Hearing this, Enon pressed his forehead and let out a deep sigh. A little drunk? Is that all? That's it. Nothing else is wrong, as you can see. Why would you drink it in the first place? Weren't there other ways to deal with it? Of course, there were other methods. They would have been much more complex and slower compared to the confusion and fear either could sow among the enemies by drinking it himself. Seeming to read the answer in either's face, Enon cursed silently and clicked his tongue. Right, this was much more effective and faster. Knowing you would be fine after drinking it anyway, there is nothing to fear. And since it's not me who would be shocked by it, I can be at ease, right? I didn't say all that. The only response was a heavy hand slapping against a furrowed forehead. Ugh. Yes, you do seem to have slight fever. Enon calmly checked either's temperature and examined his eyes and hands a few more times. Not finding any other abnormalities, he scowled. Don't eat or drink anything else until we get back. What about water? If you must drink, make it yourself. You know how to make water. Enon roughly handed Yidhir an empty cup. It doesn't seem like you need divine energy, but just in case, receive some from Lusan when he arrives, and close your eyes and rest. All right, I understand. But I do have one favor to ask. To find out what was in the drink, that's obviously something an apothecary should do. No, that's not the only thing. Just then, another knock was heard on the door. This time it was Lusan, clothed in ornate ceremonial robes, peeked his head inside. You there? I apologize for being late. How are you feeling? I'm fine. Just give him a bit of divine energy and let's go. At Enon's indifferent tone, Lusan's eyes widened as he quickly approached. Is that really all? On my way here, the members all secretly asked for an honest update on your condition. It's good to hear that there is no problem. With visible relief, Lusan infused Yidhir's hand with divine energy and began recounting how surprised he had been. I was shocked, but when Enon suddenly tried to dash toward you, you wouldn't believe how my heart almost dropped. That's partly why I went to the bathroom, to calm down. When did I ever do that? Stop talking nonsense and leave once you have given him the divine energy, kid. Enon raised his voice to interrupt Lusan's words, but Yidhir had already heard enough to guess what would come next. Is that so? No, I said it's not. I'm sorry, Enon. Muttering what sounded like curses under his breath, Enon wore a fierce expression. Lusan, letting out a small laugh, gradually reduced the amount of divine energy he was channeling to Yidhir. Now that I think about it, he began. When I was about to come in here, a knight who was standing next to the crown prince was in front of the next lounge. He looked at me menacingly, so I wondered, did the crown prince secretly send him to check on Yidhir's condition? Is that so? That's fortunate. Fortunate? What do you mean? Enon, what I want to ask of you is directly related to that. What now? Enon shouted, but Yidhir had no doubt that both he and Lusan would fulfill his request. On your way out, could you leave the door ajar and both of you pretend to leave but come back and wait in the adjacent lounge? ... If I want to invite someone who doesn't even have the courage to open the door, I think I need to do at least that much. Will you do it for me? Hey. A few moments later, Keol Diarca carefully opened the door, which had been left just loose enough for anyone to easily open. His eyes filled with extreme anxiety as he whispered in a stifled voice. Are you in here, huh? If you're going to come in quickly. Just sticking your head in and leaving your body outside looks even stranger. Upon hearing Yidhir's voice, Keol took a deep breath, quickly closed the door, and entered the lounge. Only when he realized no one else was in the room did he let out a sigh of relief and rub his chest. Do you know how hard it was for me to sneak away from the crown prince? And to summon me on a day like this, at a time like this? That's none of my concern. It was clear from Keol's face that he found it unbearable not to curse at Yidhir's audacity. However, there was nothing he could do. Idil gestured towards the sofa opposite him. Sit down. There is no point in wasting time.